Hi everyone, thank you for joining us and welcome to this talk, Insights from the Cambridge English Corpus. My name's Laura Grimes and I'm a senior researcher on the language research team here at Cambridge University Press. In this short talk, I'll introduce you to the Cambridge English Corpus. Because it's such a rich resource, there are so many fascinating things we could talk about. It's easy to spend hours getting lost in the corpus data, but in this presentation, I've chosen just a handful of insights to share, and I hope you as teachers of English on the front line of language learning will find them interesting and useful. So whether you're new to corpus linguistics or if you've used a corpus before in your own research, this will give you a taste of the sorts of insights we can draw from the Cambridge English Corpus. So first of all, what is the Cambridge English Corpus and why do we use it? The Cambridge English Corpus is a multi-billion word collection of spoken and written English held in digital form. It contains a huge range of language, everything from academic writing and lectures, business emails, newspaper articles, to text messages, phone conversations, and family chats around the dinner table. We analyse this huge collection of language to find out how English behaves and monitor how it's changing. Language corpora are powerful tools because they provide real data and evidence about language, so we can use them to validate our intuitions and unearth some surprises too. In this session, we'll look at three sets of insights from the corpus data: collocations and word behaviour, language change featuring adverbs, and finally, we'll look at some of the most common words in the English language and their uses. One of the most useful things we can find from the corpus is collocations, words which frequently occur together or near each other in natural language, and these are really useful for language learners. Here's a set of nouns on screen. Can you guess which verb they collocate with? If you're watching live, then you can add your answers into the chat. I'll give you a second to guess. Okay, here's the answer. It's the verb cause. What's surprising about this is that all these collocates are negative. Nothing there is good. And even as expert English speakers, this isn't something that we could get from intuition alone, and it's not something we could easily Google, but it is really useful for learners, and especially because the equivalent verb in a learner's first language might not behave in this same way, and that's why the dictionary definition reflects. Now, there are many insights that have come up in our research into language change, but let's have a look specifically at these four adverbs and the way they've changed over the last 20 years in spoken conversational British English. In terms of language change, these four adverbs have something in common. We use them all much more frequently now than we did 20 years ago. I'm interested to hear your intuitions about this one. Which adverb from the ones on the screen do you think has increased in frequency the most? Is it so, just, like, or literally? I'll give you a second, and if you're joining us live, then do add your answers into the chat. Okay, so the biggest change we've seen in terms of frequency is with the adverb literally, which has increased from 19 per million in the 90s to nearly 200 per million 20 years later. That's a huge increase. And what's interesting about literally is the way we use it and how that's changed. Let's have a look at some uses in more detail. So if we were to teach the meaning of the word literally, it'd probably look along the lines of the Cambridge Dictionary definition, using the real or original meaning of a word or phrase. For example, we live literally just around the corner from her, meaning we do actually live just around the corner. However, there's a new use of this word. In the second example, I was literally bowled over by the news. This person wasn't actually physically knocked over by the news. What they mean here is that the news was extremely surprising to them, so they've used literally to emphasize that. In our data, we see a substantial increase in this non-literal metaphorical use of literally, and a decrease in frequency of the original literal meaning. This means that 20 years ago, it was mostly used in a literal sense, but now the proportion of uses has changed. The difference between the two senses is becoming much narrower. You may have been intuitively aware of this trend before now, but we can see from the evidence and from the data that this is actually happening and something that learners are likely to encounter. when they're communicating in English out in the wild. Insights about language change like this can sometimes provoke quite an emotional response, particularly from people who are concerned that language is decaying. The media really loves to complain about this and often blames teenagers or young people for ruining the English language. But the fact is, language change isn't good or bad. It's just an inevitable, natural process. Languages are constantly evolving, and the corpus is a really great source of information about how modern English is changing. So language change is a fascinating topic of research, one of my favourites, but actually the basic nuts and bolts of English have stayed pretty much the same for a very long time. And we can see this when we look at the most common words in English. What do you think the most common word in the English language is? I'll give you a second to have a guess. And again, if you're watching live, then you can add your answers into the chat. Okay, the answer is the, by quite a margin. You can see on the chart the top 5 most common words: the, be, of, to, and. Did you guess any of them right? Well then, if you did. So let's get a bit more specific. What do you think are the 5 most common nouns in English? Again, I'll give you a minute to have a think and add your guesses into the chat. Okay, so here are the top 5 nouns in the Cambridge English Corpus: year, time, people, day, and way. Interestingly, 3 out of 5 of these words share a common theme: year, time, and day, and it would make sense. Time is something we all share. We're all concerned about never having enough of it, especially teachers planning lessons or students preparing for exams. So it makes sense that they're words we use all the time and they're very common. In fact, according to our corpus, time is the most common abstract noun in spoken British English. Like many abstract nouns, time is a really versatile and useful word which we use to express lots of meanings, and we can see evidence of these different meanings in the corpus data. Time commonly appears with verbs spend and waste, as in the example, he spends so much time on his phone. We also see time collocating with consume, as in, this is so time consuming. Lastly, we also see time as a specific event, as in the example, I got it wrong the first time. Speaking of time, we've just about run out of time for this talk. So that's all from me. Thank you very much for joining us. I hope you've enjoyed it, you've learned something new. If you'd like to read more about corpus research, then do head over to the World of Better Learning blog. There are loads of articles on there with insights drawn from the Cambridge English Corpus. I'll link a few of my favourite articles in the description box below, and I'll also add some links to resources you can use if you'd like to try your hand at corpus research yourself. Thanks again for joining us. Take care and enjoy the rest of Insights on Demand.